Hey team, this is Jared. This is Suspending Disbelief, the podcast. I recorded this a hot minute ago with my friend Amina from the Dream World podcast. You can check her out on her TikTok, her Instagram, and her podcast is all over. It's called Dream World Podcast. You can find her under the same name on Instagram and TikTok. I have been sitting on a lot of recordings of different podcast episodes without wanting to record the intro. I hate doing this for some reason. I really just dislike it. I hardly remember the conversations. I know they're awesome. And so I just want to introduce them and get it out there. But I feel like I'm supposed to do some sort of like summary or something, but I'm not going to do that. We talk about dreams. I get very excited. I talk a lot at the beginning. Disclaimer, I talk a lot at the beginning because this was originally for her podcast, not mine. And so I was the interviewee. And so I talk a lot, but we thought it would be fun to share it on both of our podcasts. So I talk a lot about a dream that I'm excited about. She talks a lot about lucid dreaming, lucidity. She works much more with the lucid dreams than I do. I don't get lucid as often. And so we talk about how we work with dreams respectively. And if you're interested in dream work or if you're interested in anything really related to dreams, this should be a good time for you. So strap yourself in, suspend your disbelief, and enjoy the podcast. Hello.
Hey Jared, how are you?
I am doing good. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just fine. How about me?
Perfect. Sorry about any background noise.
That's all right. Where are you
Oh,
at?
I had to come to a McDonald's for some Wi-Fi because I was having issues at home.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
No worries. Getting it done.
exactly. Got to do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited to talk to you today and record this podcast and everything.
Yeah, me too. I'm really, really stoked to have the opportunity. And I honestly, if I could just talk about this stuff all day, every day for the rest of my life, I would.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Cool. You have a podcast too, right?
Yeah, I just started it. I literally just posted my third episode like right now. I just posted
Nice.
it. So, very yours is very structured, I feel like, and edited, and mine's very chaotic like I
And
am.
this really, I'm just figuring it out as I go, honestly. Like, I'm still kind of learning how to edit and like, I'm starting to listen to other podcasts so I can get an idea of like how to like cook and like do the beginning intro and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I listened to a few of your episodes and I recall being impressed with the production. So I think you're doing
Oh,
good.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
I
that.
I studied audio and like have been working in the music industry for the last 10 years. Um, I don't like editing, but I'd like to think that I have a good ear for like good production, but who knows?
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I use Adobe Audition to edit.
Yeah, cool. Very
Cool.
cool.
Awesome. Well, I mean, really, we can start whenever you're ready and we'll just kind of make it like a casual convo, just talk about cool stuff.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm ready whenever you are. I had a pretty crazy dream last night. Not that crazy actually, but I have like these calls and responses in my dreams where I'll be called to do something, and then when I do it in real life, I get kind of a resolution like thank you from my dream. And I had one of those last night, which felt really good. Um, and I haven't even voiced it yet, right? Like I just wrote it down, but I haven't really even like thought about it since. So it'd be interesting to dive in there. But I wanted to ask you before because I could go on a train one direction, but I like want to make sure you're not specifically interested in me talking about any
I'm
of the
not
topics that
picky.
I
It
sent you.
doesn't matter. I love the topics, but yeah, I just kind of just as a general idea, but I would love to hear about your dream and wherever that takes us, honestly, it's cool with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, well, yeah. So that dream, like, I want to tell you the original dream. So I work with my dreams, just first of all. So I'm Jared, and I like really, really. Well, I struggled with hardcore addiction for 10 years, alcohol, drugs, anything that could regulate my emotional state. I really did not like feeling things and blah, blah, blah. I got sober 4 years ago. And in that process, I got very interested in Carl Jung, and I found like a Jungian analysis and got really into dream work. He's like a really big he's a dream shaman. He studied like dream shamanism in Africa, and when I do a session with him, we just go back into my dream, right? And he guides me through the dream. It's very, very interesting. And I've built a very strong relationship with my dream world. Like he is about Machiel Clerk is his name. He's about to release a book called Dream Guidance, and he calls it like the wise counselor. Like we have this wise counselor inside of us that's ready to answer any question if we really want to know. We just have to ask. And anyway, so I've been doing that, but also studying all of these other things. But this specific dream that I'm going to tell you is like just one aspect of how I've used my dreams, because it's helped me in every aspect. Like I've worked through complexes with nightmares. I've worked through like physical pain, like foot pain and stomach pain. I've been able to like pinpoint what the issue was based on it, like asking my dream and getting responses from my dream and stuff. And I really, really am fueled by dreams. Like I kind of tap into a source of energy just through my dreams, which I really like. So this one was kind of like helping me with some unconscious content, some shadow work, right? And so I had this dream 4 days ago, maybe, where I was in a treehouse, and I'm like a kid, and there's a big Rottweiler, like a scary, loud, sharp teeth, black dog, like big, right? Like almost as big as I am. And we're up in a treehouse. And so I'm like super scared, and I push him, like he's holding on to like this part of the treehouse with his teeth like hanging from the treehouse. And I like push him off, and he falls. And in the dream, I realized like I've been doing this many times where like he keeps getting up there and I keep pushing him off. And he falls, and I notice he falls right in front of this security guard that's like patrolling the base of the treehouse. And I'm like, shoot, he's gonna come after me because he has some sort of relationship with this dog. And so I start running, and I'm gathering all my stuff. I'm putting all my clothes in like this basket, and I run upstairs. Like there's a multiple story treehouse, but for some reason I really like tree houses. I don't dream about them often, but it's a very playful, childlike place for me to be. I made a lot of tree houses when I was a kid. And so I run upstairs, and then I'm like hiding, and he comes around and runs into this homeless man who I didn't realize was also in this treehouse. But he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" The security guard's asking the homeless man. And he's like, "Oh, I live here." Like, and he's like, "Where's your stuff?" He's like, "I don't have any stuff." And then they both are like, "Oh, well, let's find this kid." And so they're like searching for me, and I just start running and running and running. And I'm like, the rest of the dream is just me running away, right? Like hiding and hiding, which I don't have that dream very often. So I woke up kind of like startled at the very end, because it started to be like my parents' basement, and I was just running and running and like practicing opening the windows to get out of them quickly. Like I was like all of this preparation to run from this security guard. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and this is how I work with my dreams. I know you do a lot of lucid dreaming, but I actually get so excited when I find out I'm lucid that I wake up, and I have such like a good relationship with the way I dream right now that I haven't worked on that yet. I'm excited to talk. I want to hear more about your relationship, because I think it would be fun for me and explorative to develop that. But anyway, so I wake up and I'm in the real world, and I realize I'm safe, and then I go back into the dream. That's how I work with my dream. Like I will wake up, I sit up, typically write it down really quickly, and then once I feel safe, I will essentially, like, in that, what you told me the name of the word, I call it hypnagogic, but you told me that that's the falling from wakeful into sleep. What's the other word?
Hypnopompia. It's the opposite, waking up.
Hip
Hypnopompia.
Hypnopompia.
Yeah,
Hypnopompia.
hypnopompia. Yeah.
Okay, I need to remember that, because since you told me, I've been talking about that very thing like 4 different times, and I'm like, I'm not saying this right. But anyway,
I don't even know if I'm saying it right.
so
I
I
think it is
mean,
hypnopompia.
yeah, that's how it looks, at least
Yeah.
now. Um, so I go back into the dream, and I the first thing I do is I turn around. So I go back to where he's chasing me, right? And I turn around, because like I just have learned over time that that's where the information is in that interaction of being chased. So I turn around, and at this point it's like my active imagination, but I am very sleepy still, right? This is like 3 4 in the morning, and I'm slipping right back in. So it's like I let my imagination kind of just take it and go with it. And I turn around and I face the security guard, and he, like, all of a sudden has this compassionate, like, almost worry about me. And I also realized that he just loves the dog. He really loves the dog, and he really wants me to treat the dog with respect. And so he kind of comes towards me, and he puts his arm around me like a father figure, kind of, and is like, "Hey, bud, like, why are you treating the dog so poorly?" Like, he's kind of, he's stern, but he's like compassionate. It's really interesting. And I'm like, well, he keeps trying to bite me. Like, I'm terrified of this dog, right? Like, it's scary. His teeth are super sharp. And he tells me, this is in my active imagination, but the dream character, the security guard, tells me the dog just doesn't know it's I'm trying to think of exactly what he said. It was something like, the dog doesn't know where he is on the hierarchy. He doesn't know that if you are, like, he just needs to know that you are in charge, and he's just trying to establish that relationship. And you're running away and not establishing a dominance over this dog, and that's causing the dog not to know how to interact with you. Which I then had a flashback memory of my brother, who had just met my girlfriend's dog, and like, he told the dog to sit, and he said it like very, very powerfully, right? But I noticed next to him, I was like, oh, he's like full of compassion, my brother. And I was very impressed. I was like, he's like really good at telling a dog to sit, which sounds weird, but I never had dogs growing up. I never experienced like a masculine or like a dominant relationship with the dog. I've always kind of just let other people do that. And anyway, so this dream character literally was telling me, like, there's this dog in me that is obviously, I kind of reference a lot of how my symbols have showed up in my dreams prior to this, but it's very, very obviously a instinct, like a lower mammalian instinct in me. Like, obviously for me, it's obvious that it's probably like sexually related, or like sexual drive type of things. And that there's this relationship that I have with that part of me that is unsure of the dynamic, like whether it's in charge, or if like my higher consciousness is in charge, right? And which is a very interesting thing. I grew up Mormon, lots of sexual repression, all of these different things, right? But so I like hear my brother saying sit to this dog, and I realize, like, that's the relationship I need to have with my own like instinctual sexuality, which is interesting. It's a compassionate, that's the main important part. It wasn't aggressive, it was very compassionate, but telling it like, I'm the boss, and like, you need to sit, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was like really, this is like, my dreams show up like this, where they're kind of like showing me where I'm not quite aligned, and I need to work on these things. And so I spent the last few days really like practicing this sounds kind of weird now that I'm saying it out loud. I haven't talked to anyone about this, but like I've been like looking in the mirror and being like sit, but I'm practicing the compassionate part, right? Like you could tell a dog to sit and be almost like rude or toxic or like uh tyrannical or something, right? But to like I watched my brother do it and he did it so compassionately. It was really
Yeah.
interesting.
I feel like the dog feels the energy too. Like
Right, definitely.
yeah.
And the compassionate thing, well, I don't know if I told you this, but he had just met this dog. The dog doesn't like people very often. He did that and she immediately sat and like fell in love with him, like it worked really well. And so I was like, wow, like I felt the energy because I was so close to him, and I was very impressed with my brother. He's my little brother too, and I was, I guess, yeah, like, I don't have that relationship with my what I would oversimplify. I oversimplify a lot of things. I know there's more nuance to it, but like I call it my masculinity, right? Like masculine energy. I don't know. There's a tyrannical part, a toxic masculinity, but there's also a very positive masculinity. And I saw it come out in him like a dominance that's very positive. And in the dream, it's like, hey, that's the relationship you need inside of yourself towards some of these more instinctual parts of you. Because it's all about trying to get along, especially in me. I have so many moving parts that are all fighting each other. It's all like the last 4 years has been about getting those parts of me to all get along. Like I have a voting system now I've personified all the different parts of me and using dream work, right? And been able to give certain ones votes. Like you get a couple votes. The surfer Jared doesn't get any votes because all he wants to do is go smoke weed and like not do anything productive. And so I'm like, I get it, dude. Like, but we did that for the last 10 years. We're gonna give some of the other people more votes. And so I was working on this over the last 4 days, and then this morning I had a dream of walking through an alley with a group of friends and coming up on like these big shadow figures that then like beat us up, like mugged us. And then I woke up right after that, but not really. I woke up like a false wake up, which I've not actually experienced very often. And then I went back into the dream. So like from the false wake up, I went back into the dream with a dog, which is really interesting. So I brought Izzy, the dog from real life, back into the alley, and she was able to like protect us. And then I false woke up again, and Izzy, the dog, came and like hugged me. It was really actually kind of weird. Like the dog hugged me like almost a human would hug me. It's very dream weird, right? But it was so comforting. Like I was like in an embrace, like it snuggled up. She snuggled up to me, and it was like this warm embrace of this dog. And that meant a lot to me because I haven't ever had a relationship like that with a dog. And so this metaphor of like connecting with a part of me that just needed some like parenting almost, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, so that was my last 4 days of dream work, which it's pretty constant. It's very fun.
That's cool. I think it's really awesome how you have like a good relationship with your dreams where like you understand what it's trying to tell you. Because a lot of people, they have these recurring scary situations and they don't have the ability to like tap in and understand like their own language, like you're tapped in it. That's super cool. The false awakenings is such a confusing thing also. It can be so like confusing.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah.
I think people can get really, really scared of that. I actually was answering a TikTok the other day because I use a lot of intuition. I don't know for sure. I'm very like TikTok's not a very good platform to be like, this is one answer, but it might not be like the full answer, right? But I was telling someone that false awakenings to me seem somewhat like the unconscious mind. The dream world is really trying to keep you in it because it has something really important to tell you. So the false awakenings to me are like, no, 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 like not yet. You know, we got more work to do here. We really need you to feel this emotion. Like I think of dreams very much so as an intelligent part of the psyche, um, bringing to you what it is you need to become conscious of.
Yeah, it's definitely like you said earlier, like your internal therapist. That's such a good way to put it. And like the more you tap in, like it's like it becomes conversational. You know, your dreams will show you, but you have to pay attention to it. And like, you know, I know you said you know you kind of wanted to get into lucid dreaming, which is super cool. It opens up a whole like new interaction with the dream. But I've always like, just as much as I love lucid dreaming, I love my regular non-lucid dreams as well, because when you're lucid and you have control and you know that you're dreaming, you know, you kind of take over the script. You don't really have leave room for the dream to show you, you know, what it wants to show you. So, you know, there's benefits of both for sure.
Yeah, I've actually thought a lot about that. I've talked about this on TikTok too, where it's like I feel that lucid dreaming is asserting the will of my ego into the dream world. And that can be very explorative and fun because I could interact with unconscious characters, right? And when I say, I want to be sure to let people know that, and to let you know that when I talk about like psychological terms and stuff, like there is a lot of depth to the framework I use, which is Jungian psychology, and it like is very spiritual. So it sounds like I'm like over rationalizing things sometimes, but I just want to let people know that I'm actually very open to not what I would call irrational, but I would call non-rational, like
Yeah.
the other side.
Yeah, me too. Because I mean, I'm a scientist. I have a background in psychology, neuroscience as well. I study that. But I kind of took it further and like I'm very spiritual as well. And I just understand that there's so much more to reality than just our physical reality. Our dreams don't really operate on logic and rationality sometimes. So you have to be able to like look outside the box and like know that there's so much that we don't know.
Right. I actually think that fundamentally, a sickness that has happened in our culture, in the Western culture, is a repression of non-rationality. So we overvalue rationality, and that actually manifests in the lack of interest in the dream world, which is really
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy how much like, you know, people value science and evidence a lot, which I do as well, but we have to understand that science and what we consider scientific facts is just what a bunch of people came together and studied. You know, science only goes as far as what we know as humanity, you know,
right.
which is very limited. And so, yeah, you have to take that a step further and see the bigger picture, you know, just to be open to it, you know, because yeah, our dreams have so much to show us. We just can't think of it so rationally or literally sometimes.
Yeah, right. And going back to the lucid dreaming and like opposing my will into a lucid dream, it's really exciting in theory for me to be able to ask a dream character, like, who are you? Like, what part of you are, what part of the unconscious are you? Are you in my personal unconscious? Are you some type of, you know, deeper collective being or archetype? And uh what's what's like you were saying, what's interesting about not lucid dreaming, letting the dream world dream, like the unconscious kind of speak its own language to you, it feels like I'm participating by setting aside my ego and allowing, but I think that there's a applicability or a usefulness to both of those things.
Yeah, yeah, because when you bring your ego into that space, it kind of becomes a little experiment. Like you already know what you need to work on, what areas you want to address more, and then you can look deeper into that. Or if you're like you were saying, you're having a recurring nightmare or something like that, when you're lucid and you become lucid in that recurring nightmare, you can kind of approach it differently because you're not scared anymore. You can experiment and like you were saying, asking dream characters stuff and like picking their brains. I love doing that. It's so fun. And what I've come to realize is that there are like, and I made a video about this, I do feel like there are different types of characters in your dreams. Like there are
I
some,
watched that. Yeah.
yeah, there are some that are just a projection of our subconscious and our, you know, reiteration of our memories, but there are some that really do feel like they have their own thoughts and their own minds. And I've had dream characters tell me like, oh yeah, I know what dreamers are. They're kind of annoying because when they become lucid they do crazy stuff in my town or whatever, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Or they've told me like, oh, like don't, you know, don't tell anybody that you're lucid because, you know, they'll kick you out, and they have kicked me out of the dream before. So like, it really makes me feel like there's like levels to it. Like you were saying, there's like, energies, beings, entities, whatever you call them, that kind of like live there and tap into our dream spaces. There's like a collective and energy there.
Yeah, but I completely agree. I didn't mean to say but. There's so many ways to conceptualize it, right? Like you're saying, like there's beings or angels, demons, all of the words that we've been using for thousands of years, the archetypes, like Jung would call them. There's this the interesting thing about it is that I do believe that our individual experience, like our own ego, let's say, will maybe conceptualize, or what's the word I'm looking for? They'll visually see, like, let's say me and you went into the deep collective unconscious and we met the same archetype or angel or whatever. We might actually see it completely differently, right? Like it might be a different imagery. And that's what people, I don't think, understand about the unconscious, is that it's a different, I feel like it's a different dimension, right? Like it's outside of time. It's like you can actually experience yesterday and tomorrow. And there's actually, this is like, I just finished Carl Jung's theory on synchronicity, and he really was, him and Einstein would sit around and talk about relativity. And it got Jung thinking all about the relativity of the psyche, specifically to like time space. Very interesting stuff. But
Super cool. I love that type of stuff. It's so crazy to me. Not even crazy, but just so fascinating.
mm-hmm. It is a little crazy, like in the best way. I
Yeah.
actually, it makes me think of the original. Oh, so I was listening to someone, I think it was Michael Mead is his name. He's a psychoanalyst, or analytical psychologist, different than Freud. It's Jungian. He was telling me that the word weird, which I kind of think of crazy and weird as being similar in a sense, but the original Welsh meaning of weird meant to have one foot in the dream world and one foot in reality.
Wow, I'm weird. I knew it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I really like that. I was like, yeah, I've always felt like I was
Me
weird, and now I
too.
know why.
I tell people all the time that I live in the dream world part-time. I mean, we spend a third of our lives asleep. That's like a really big chunk, like a third. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep has turned to be a very important part of my life, right? Like I will not stay up late just to
You
have
keep a
good
dream
time.
journal too? You write your dreams down?
Yeah, I do. I most of the time, I actually was listening to, I think you were talking about it on one of your podcasts, but you use like an app that then you could reference specific symbols and like do this thing. But I've always done that by hand. Yeah, what's it called?
It's called Oniri. Look, this is all my dreams I have written. There's so many.
Yeah,
But by hand
you
is cool too. Whatever works for you.
but I liked the idea because I've had to read through my dreams, and I had to take a separate sheet and write like every time I see a car, right? And then like I did tallies, and I'm not actually very good at that analysis stuff. So I was, when I heard you say that, I was like, oh, I could have a computer do it for me.
Yeah, you would like it. It's called Oniri, and you
How do you
can
spell that?
pick Oniri. Like the word comes from the word Onaut, which it means dream traveler. Onaut means
Oh,
like, yeah. So Oniri, Oniri. It's a
cool.
iPhone app. Yeah, it's like you can pick emotions, you put objects, characters, and then you can search by keywords. So it's really convenient for me because I always look back. If I have a dream and I'll be like, this reminded me of another dream, or if I have a moment in real life that reminds me of a dream, I'll like search it and reread it, and it always brings up like more just information.
Yeah, something I don't do enough is go back and reference things that come up. Like just the other day, I had a dream where I haven't smoked marijuana in 4 years, as well as alcohol, and I have dreams often, and I didn't realize this. So the point of me bringing this up was that I didn't realize this until I had this dream the other day, and then realized that this same symbol shows up over and over and over again, which is me loading like a bowl or something and offering it to people and then having them deny it. But then me never smoking. I never smoke in my dreams, but I'm always trying to offer it to people. And I dreamt that, and I was like, whoa, I do this all the time in my dreams. Like it's kind of weird, but I still don't really know what it means. But
Interesting. I mean, definitely if you I have also like a similar thing like you. Like I've I smoke weed still, and I've been trying to cut back, for personal reasons, for dream reasons. But
Yeah, does it affect your dreams a little bit?
it does. Like I don't dream at all, and that
Right.
sucks. Like I love
Yep.
my dreams, and so yeah, it's THC suppresses your REM sleep, and it just knocks you out. Usually, I mean, I have had lucid dreams after I smoke before bed. I have, but it's possible, but it's more difficult.
Yeah, chemically, I think,
Yeah,
like you're saying,
exactly.
it
Yeah.
actually holds you from REM, which is unfortunate because you need that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, and then I guess I also wanted to tell you a little bit about what you said earlier about the stabilization when you become lucid. You know how you were saying that when you realize that you're dreaming, you just wake up immediately or you get excited or
I
whatever.
get so excited.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very common. That's so common. And like it happened to me as well when I first started trying to lucid dream. Because I used to have spontaneous lucid dreams like growing up and stuff. But then when I started like, well, I can induce this on purpose, um, you know, sorry about the crying baby. So what happens is, you're in your dream body, right? You're no longer in your physical body. So the idea of stabilization or stabilizing the lucid dream is to like, stabilize your dream body. So what you can do is focus on your five senses. You have touch, smell, taste, hearing, whatever. So what I do is like I feel my hands, or like if there's a texture around me, like I'll just like like so vividly admiring it and like really feeling the texture. And then that makes the dream like immediately more vivid, more stable. You won't wake up because you want to take a deep breath. You already are excited. So you want to stay calm, take a deep breath. And before you like rush to go do things, like you were saying, before you go exert your ego into the dream, just observe and take it in, like
Yeah.
through your senses and also through the standing there and just looking around and like literally stabilizing, like taking a second to take a deep breath. Sometimes I'll like lick the floor or something, just to kind of like really feel everything around me. And then that
Sure.
that really helps.
That's interesting because I conceptualize that and I'm like, it makes sense. We do that in reality to become more grounded in
Yeah, it's
reality.
mindfulness basically.
Right. Um, but the funny thing is that I'm really bad at doing that in reality, and it probably is a big reason why I'm not good at staying in a dream world too, because I have a hard time staying in this reality, or this like, yeah, and it's funny because that's what I'm working on right now is being way more conscious of being in my body. I've spent the last 30 years of my life, I'm 31, trying to be out of my body. I don't like being in my body because I don't like how strong I feel things. But I think eventually it will be some sort of blessing. But
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a journey. But what I found is being in that lucid body and spending more time lucid, I feel like it'll help you in a new journey within your dreams, because you'll still always have your regular lessons within your dreams, but now you have a whole other area of things you can explore while lucid, in your dream body.
yeah, yeah, there's been times like the last time I almost got lucid, I was like walking through some chamber, like it felt like Greece, like in ancient Greece. And I was walking through like these pillars, and then there was like a group of people, or maybe it was just one guy or something, and he like was like in a hot tub and he's like, come have a bath with me or something, and I was like, whoa, this is a dream. And then I woke up and I was really sad because I was gonna go hot tubbing in Greece. It was like very interesting.
That would have been
um
cool.
yeah, it was very funny. It was very like very interesting.
Yeah.
But
Well, you were close. You were close. So that's still a success.
yeah, I haven't really tried since then. The interesting thing is I work so much with my dream, but I also have a lot of issues with sleeping. I have a lot of anxiety in the nighttime with like restless leg syndrome, which I don't adhere to like I don't like being diagnosed with things. So part of me is also like, what is that energy trying to get me to do? Right? Like what is it that my body, maybe I'm just um sleeping too much and it wants me to get up and write, because like I never write except for in the middle of the night. It's like the only time I will have focus or something inwardly.
Yeah, I like how you say that. What is the energy trying to get me to do? That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, my therapist Makiel, he's helped me a lot. Like when I first went to him, he's talking about depression, right? It's like I don't want to be depressed, obviously. And he was like, well, does a tree in the winter sit and try to will leaves onto onto its branches all winter long? um and we started discussing that concept of like during the winter a tree actually moves its energy down into its root system, um and works on grounding itself more than an outward extroversion, if you will. And so he's like, well, what if we look at it this way, where it's like your energy is moving? What is it moving to? What is it trying to get you to do? Right. And a lot of people talk about this with depression, that things become a lot more realistic. People have, like, there's studies done that people who are experiencing depression actually look at the world in a much more, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say practical. It's a little pessimistic maybe, but like grounded, where there's less optimism and less like, what's the word, not fantasy, but like we move through the world with a lot of big ideas, if you will. We get very excited about things, we think grand. If we're in a really good place, we're like, we think bigger than what reality is typically, right? Like we shoot for the stars and we hit the moon or whatever. But when you're depressed, you kind of see things how they actually are. And so if you're moving through these cycles, you can use, for me, this is what I do. When I'm low, I use that to make sure that my finances are getting, like, my financial needs are getting met. Like, actually be like, okay, wait, hold on. Because when I'm like up in the clouds, I don't pay attention to money. I don't do those
Yeah,
things.
true. You got to do the groundwork, stay grounded with your head in the clouds.
Right. And usually I'm depressed and it's like, oh man, I don't have enough money, this and that. But that's the funny thing, is that my attention is redirected towards making sure that that I'm uh financially structured and like emotionally and physically grounded. You know what I mean? It's really interesting. It's also, I'm not saying that depression is like not real, but I think there's utility, or you can find utility in most energy, most things.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's definitely like a perspective thing as well. I've been there too. And yeah, sometimes it just takes, looking at the bigger picture, to pull yourself out of something like that.
Yeah, or even letting it naturally cycle out of it, because I think for
True.
me, it's, I fight it a lot and it actually kind of feedback loops and makes me feel worse.
Yeah.
Whereas if I, and this is always a struggle to accept where you're at, kind of, for me. And if I'm able to do that, it's almost like, I live in Utah, we have all 4 seasons. And when I'm in winter, I don't like winter. I don't like real winter. And if I just try to find pleasant things about it, like the silence after a snowstorm, I really like that. And just try to remember like the little things, and kind of just like, it's not like I'm powering through, but I'm waiting for spring. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
the
I want spring to
seasons.
come. Yeah.
Yeah, life is all about seasons, really. And dreams too. Like, I've even noticed that. Like, my dreams will have seasons, and it's just
Mhm.
about tapping into like that. And like, if I have a lot of nightmares in a row, like, I'll just kind of let it pass, figure out, what it's trying to tell me instead of trying to fight back. That resistance in the dream world, like, makes everything harder. Lucid or not lucid, you don't want to resist.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, a lot like psychedelic work. So like entheogens and ayahuasca and psilocybin, but like, my I don't want to like spend too much time on that, but I do like making the parallel between working with the unconscious mind through substances and working through dreams, right? Like, I think it's the same thing with different, like, you introduce a different energy inside, a different intelligence, if you will, with a medicine. And like the dream world, I think, is the human portal to like the human function. It's like a function in the psyche that the dream is, to connect us to that reality. And we really don't like going inward as a culture, and so we found ways to get there using extroverted outer world things, like ingesting a mushroom, right? And but I think it brings us to the same place. So if you really want to, like, I try to tell people this, you could work with ayahuasca, but you could also go to sleep and work with your dream. And it will be very similar, and you'll have except for that, I think dreams bring up more relevant information in a way that your psyche, your ego, will be able to handle. I think the totality of our psyche is very intelligent, and it will bring to you what you are ready for, right? It won't bring your trauma up that you're still not ready to digest, like a mushroom trip might do. And so I think people should spend time learning to integrate dream work, if they want to like really utilize those stronger medicines.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they're all tools, everything has a tool. You don't want to overdo it, but a dream is like the best place to start because like you said, it's like the in between, between all the dimensions or whatever that we can access every night. It may take longer, but it's easier to digest. And even things like meditation and things like that, like these are all tools that we can use to like just elevate our consciousness and like learn more about ourselves. It's, just finding what works for you.
Yeah, and I think there was something, hold on, there's something you said that made me think of this, but I can't remember the connection here. But I find it really interesting or important to work with dreams, specifically because like we think of becoming healthier and mental health and all of these things in kind of a strange way, but I really do think that dreams are like a built-in therapist, like we were talking about earlier. But you have these parts of you that are underneath consciousness, right, that you are not conscious of, and those might be things that you were never conscious of, like dormant from birth, or things that you repressed, or things that were suppressed by the psyche, because you weren't ready for it, like an emotion that you couldn't handle or something. And so we're conscious of the things we're conscious of, but there's a whole, it's like everything you swept under the bed, right? Like your room looks really clean, but there's a bunch of shit under the bed. And so dreams are like the thing that like will take whatever's under the bed and kind of like shove it out so that you see it again. And you could shove it right back under the bed, or you could pick it up and put it where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, and that's where the connection comes in. You have to apply it to real life. And you mentioned this earlier, you have to really take the lessons and integrate them. That's where the lucid living comes in, which is what I call it, which is where you take what you learn in your dreams and really like dive deeper into it instead of like hiding from it.
Yeah. And it can be scary. I've noticed this is something that might be the most important thing I've learned about dreams, is when I'm terrified of something, let's say the security guard that's chasing me, if I get back into the dream, either lucid or through active imagination, dreaming, like living the dream on, or dream tending or something, there's lots of different words for it, but going back in and turning around and facing it, I've every time I do that, something magical happens. Like one time there was a witch at my door and I was terrified, right? Like she was terrifying. And in the dream, I opened the door and I body slammed her over my knee, which is really brutal, but that's what I did. I
Yeah,
was
that's
terrified. I was like,
it's really a life lesson, face your fears. It's always like the fear is worse than what it is you're scared of, the thing itself.
right. But that was an interesting dream because I opened the door and body slammed her, but I did not ask her what she had for me. Right. And so I went back in and didn't body slam her this time and asked her, like, what are you trying to bring to me? And there was this bubble that emitted from her that everything that it touched, like flowers and life, sprung up from. So she was like this scary old witch, but she had this aura that was bringing life. And I felt a jolt of like life energy once I went back into the dream. And these little characters, they have energy, like libidinal psychic energy, that if you connect with them, they will share it. So I've like found self-love through dream work, where I tapped into this woman. I was like milking. I was feeding 4 triplets or quadruplet babies in my dream, and I kept on running out of milk for the 4th one, and I was so stressed out. I was like, how am I, this baby's getting skinnier and skinnier, I don't know what to do. And And I thought it was about all this symbolism and like the four and all this stuff, which there probably is there, but then there was this character watching me. And I went back into the dream and I turned around and I was like, who's this character, right? And I all of a sudden was filled with compassion and love for myself, for the effort I was putting in to feed these children.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's, I've heard a lot of people say that, and I've experienced that too, where we have the capability to receive this energy that's way greater than the amount of love that we can feel on earth. Like we can only feel so much as humans, but our like higher self, our spiritual self is capable of like receiving this euphoric amount of like love and compassion. And like sometimes you get bits of that in your dream and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes it all worth it. It gives me like enough energy to keep going. Sometimes I'll be really low, like really depressed, and I'll like beg my dream. I call my dream bringer my soul, if you will. I call her Ellie. She told me her name was Ellie actually. And I will beg her like, hey, please fill me with life tonight because I don't have enough energy to keep going. And I'll have dreams like I had a dream after that once where I went through this temple type thing and got to a room where there was a bunch of my ancestors and my grandmother was there. And I told her, I don't know if I can curse on this, but I
You
told
can,
her,
I don't care.
okay, I told her, life is fucking magical. That's what I told my grandma. And my grandma was very Mormon and very strict, and that would have really offended her in real life. But in the dream, she met me with like a big beaming smile and like the best energy. And I felt this acceptance from my ancestors. And I
Wow.
woke up full of like so much energy. It was really cool.
That's super cool. Yeah. Two things you said there that I really thought was cool, like how you were asking Ellie, your dream guide or whatever, for the dreams. Like when I talk about setting an intention, like, you can, everybody has like guides and dream guides or whatever, spirit guides. You can ask them like, hey, can you show me this in my dream? Can I dream about this? Like, show me how to resolve this. You can ask a question, and like it really is powerful. Like it can really make a big difference. And
No, it's huge.
yeah, super cool. And what was the other thing? um oh yeah, like the ancestral work, like that's super cool. Like, the fact that you're like breaking and like breaking through, making all these like healing uncovered things that maybe your grandma when she was on earth like wasn't able to do, but from the other side she's helping you understanding better.
Yeah, it felt very much so. And I went and I talked to my two brothers after, which both of them are very rational. They're introverted thinkers. I'm like a feeler. I'm a feeling type. I don't uh they're both very rational, but both of them were like, wow, it's like you had this inner feeling of not being accepted by your ancestors, your grandma. And you had this feeling of being fully accepted for who you are by your grandmother. And whether or not that's spiritual, whether or not my grandmother was in my dream, it doesn't matter because I healed that part of me. I also wanted to mention, I love like I just thought of this, like it's so interesting. I had this really uh bad taste in my mouth for the word spirit guide for so long because it sounds so woo woo, and I'm like, I have a really hard time if I can't approach something from some small rational door. But I realized like I what I really like is Carl Jung is like this rational doorway for me, but he called this part of the he always was trying to explain things scientifically, but that was like really rough for him. Like I think he much would have much rather been just a spiritual person, but he felt so much obligation to try to get it to be accepted by the scientific, the academic world. But he would explain this bringer of dreams, this part of the psyche, a function in the psyche he called the anima or the animus, which was like the animating part of the psyche, and or he called it the soul. And I think it's really interesting because we talk about spirit guides, and it really is the exact same thing where you're going in where you're meeting a part of your own psyche that is, and psyche is way different than like a part of your brain or a part of your uh like the psyche is has depth into dimensions, right? Like That's what's so weird. It's a well of, in fact, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like the psyche itself is like a little white hole or black hole, the one that things spew out of. And our realities are created by all these little white holes, which are our psyche or something like that. I'm very explorative with thoughts. I've never thought of it like this. And so I'm kind of in a midst of exploring a new idea with you. But
Yeah, it makes sense the way you're putting it into words.
yeah, so that spewing out from the ether or from like a different dimension into our reality, um there's the the guides between the two. It's like a train that connects the inner world and the outer world. And I met her on a train in my dream, which is really funny. And we were going on a journey, and we were going to hit all of these hauntings, is what she called them, which I have translated to complexes, which is interesting. But the I asked her name, and she's like, I'm Ellie. And she told me like all of these myths. Like my dream world has its own myths, which is really interesting. And anyway, so I've been looking at it as like Ellie is my anima, the animating part of my psyche, but really it's the same thing as saying she's my dream guide. That was a very long-winded way to say I think anima and dream guide, anima animus and dream guide are the same thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm gonna look more into that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because it was very polarized, masculine, feminine in Jung's day, and I think nowadays a post-Jungian would talk about anima animus as showing up non gendered essentially, but like he talks a lot about how like an anima is what a male would have and a animus is what a female would
Right,
have.
yeah.
But it in our day and age, I think the psyche is evolving in some ways. The polarization of energy embodied in people is changing. And so the animating function, the dream guides, they show it very differently, I think.
Yeah, makes sense. And like, Young, his like, I loved his work as well, but he was working with what he knew at the time. In the same way he took Freud's work and, which was very clinical based and took that to a new level, and now we are taking Young's and taking that to a new level based on what we know now. So I feel like
Right.
it's all connected for sure.
No, I like that. It's a good point. And speaking of that, I think the biggest difference in my practice of dream work it is, and I notice this with people are like, they'll comment on a TikTok. It's like, what does this dream mean?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And
That's funny.
and I think a lot of people think like when I say I can help you analyze your dream or whatever, I like the idea of being like, well, this is a symbol that could mean this, this, and this, and this, and this. And maybe because I was in the treehouse, it's referencing like a childhood behavior that I've been doing since then, and blah, blah, blah. But there's importance to that. But the reality of it is that the biggest growth leverage, like the most growth, is in embodying the emotion that is brought to you in the dream.
Yes, for sure. The emotion tells you so much, and just like the overall like vibe of the dream.
Right. You don't even need to analyze it. You can literally go back in and just feel it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about like dream objects and stuff and finding out what does this mean, what does that mean? Like your perspective of what a dog means might be completely different than what a dog means to me, So like when I help people like analyze their dreams, it's more about like I can tell you what type of questions to ask and how to approach the dream, like what to look at instead of telling you like, oh, a dog means this, because I can't tell you what your dream is trying to tell you. Like you have your own personal dream language with your dreams. And so, it's about helping people like tap into that feeling of like, what is my dream trying to tell me? Like, what is my subconscious language?
Yep. Yeah. And I think Jung saw patterns and was like, well, you could, generalize if at a specific level,
Sure, yeah.
but it's still more dangerous, I think, to tell people what their dreams mean than what you're saying is like help them guide them into understanding what their dream means themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And there's this dream interview theory, or what do you call it, process, by Gail Delaney, if anybody's interested in looking it up. And the way she approaches it is she literally asks all the questions, like if I were to, like, for example, your dog dream, if I were to explain what a dog is to you, if as if you had never ever seen a dog before, like what is a dog, what is its personality, what does it do, like what does it look like, what does it feel like if you were explaining it to like an alien, you know.
Right.
And it sounds kind of silly, but those kind of questions can really help you figure out like, oh, okay, well, a dog is something like scary, or a dog is something, you know, depending on what it is to you. And those questions can kind of open up the conversation of like, oh, well, maybe that's what that feeling is, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's kind of, you're diving into, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but into what symbolism really is, which is, it's like this dog is a dog, but if we were to break down in all of the different ways that my understanding, what my understanding of a dog is, it gets very abstract, right? Like it gets into, like, it's not like a four-legged mammal. It's like um it can get into like the evolution um of the wolf into the dog, and like this taming of the wildness in a beast, right? Or yeah, there's so many different abstract relationships for me, whereas someone that grew up with the dog, it might mean like the most comfortable thing in the world. For
True.
me, it's like a almost a wild animal that might attack me, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's cool. We're all different, you know. And dream work is such a personal journey, but it's fascinating to just like have these conversations to like just encourage people to start writing their dreams down. Like that's the very first step. Even if you don't know what a dream means, write it down because you might figure it out later.
Yes, I've come back to dreams very often, very, very often. um Speaking of, like, I am going to do a retreat in September in Tulum, Mexico, and I'm bringing, like, I have 10 spots, and I'm going to be teaching like how to work with your dreams and tarot as well. I don't know if you're into tarot, but tarot to me is a very, very similar. It's very similar to dream work, where you're kind of just projecting the unconscious mind onto symbolism rather than letting the psyche create the symbolism. You're using more archetypal universal symbolism to interact with your unconscious. But like, my goal is to start doing more and more of these retreats to really help people with what I'm calling integration tools, right? Like, we're trying to integrate that non-rational unconscious mind into our consciousness. And Jung called it, like, I think, the relativization of the ego. We're trying to make sure that we know that the rational mind isn't everything that there is. There's a whole nother world. There's a whole nother half to our reality. And we spend all of our time over in this other half. And when you're polarized like that, where um that's where, like, sickness comes from, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Um, Go ahead.
Well, no, I just was like, I don't know if I actually made a point there. There was a point, but it kind of felt very
No, but I would know what you mean. That I was thinking about your retreat, and I also like wanted to give you a second. I mean, I know you kind of gave an intro at the beginning, but um, like tell me a little bit about like what you've been doing, like what you do, where people can find you, that kind of stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I'd love to. Um so I'm a personal coach. I'm a depth coach. I don't just work with dreams. I do use Jungian um concepts, but I've been studying a lot of post Jungians, like with post Jungians. And I do, so yeah, one-on-one work with people. I am moving into doing retreats, like traveling to beautiful places to connect to the soul, to connect to the unconscious through sort of detaching from our reality, like from not our reality, but like the habitualness of your own daily life, and going somewhere beautiful, learning dream tools, learning tarot tools. My goal isn't to interpret people's dreams, it's to build their own personal relationship with their dream, right? That's what's important, is that you walk away knowing how to connect, how to get into dialogue with your dream. We all have, like you were saying, a personal guide, a counselor, as my mentor calls it, the wise counselor, who is waiting to help us. she doesn't really jump in and help if you don't ask. She's kind of patient, and she's like, no, they'll come to me when they need me. And so I want to teach people how to get into a relationship with that. Creativity, addiction, all of these things that, like, our entire life can be affected positively by doing dream work. Your relationship to money, right? Like, I'm using dreams to help fix really old complexes around, like, and when I say complexes, I mean just strong beliefs about money that I'm unconscious of. That I only can get money if I'm doing something I don't like doing. That's like a very common belief that is unconscious in most people. Anyway, so I do one-on-one work with people. You can find me through TikTok, Instagram. There's always going to be a link in my bio where you can book a free session with me, not a full session, like 15, 20 minutes where we can talk. I also love guiding people into two resources. So, like, let's say you don't want to work one-on-one with me. I know other coaches. I know podcasts that you can listen to, books you could read, all of the things. So I just like talking to people. That gives me energy, and I love doing it. So they can do that. I also have a link in that bio to that retreat. I'm going to be doing more retreats next year. And potentially the idea is that I am bringing more and more experts and less me, so that I learned from a bunch of people, right? I would love to be able to bring those people in to help teach. I like the idea of me being more of a curator and an energetic, like, exciting mixer.
Yeah.
So if people want to come to Tulum with me, that's in September. You can book a spot, like reserve your spot for like $350 and pay it in increments. And I'm very excited about that. It's going to be super intimate. And then I have that podcast. I call it Suspending Disbelief. It's on iTunes and podcasts and Spotify, whatever.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the retreats thing is so cool. That's kind of like, I feel like we're on similar paths because, I eventually want to get my own land and do dream retreats and stuff like that, and just like bring people together. So that's really cool. I'm gonna check it out. And
Yeah, we should stay in touch about it too, because I'm planning on, my goal is to have the biggest network possible, and just bring everyone together all the time.
cool. Yeah, I support anything I can do to support. I know you're going to use this for your podcast too. So if you need anything for me, like an intro or something, or how do
Yeah,
you
no,
want to do that? Like, do you just want me to edit it, or do you want me to just send you this audio recording?
I like the non-edited, but um what would you prefer? Do you want us to, because I could let you edit yours, put it out, and then I could just put out the unedited on mine, so they're
Yeah, you
slightly
can.
different,
Yeah, that's true. I edit, like, I'll just like kind of.
rearrange and stuff.
Yeah, I don't edit it too much. I just kind of take out any, like, big gaps, or if I'm like too much, I don't know, things like that, just like little stuff. And I'll add like a little music and maybe an intro, or I'll probably cut your intro and put it in the beginning, something like that.
Yeah, I would love for you to tell us about you, and I don't know if you need to go right this second, but if you would like tell slightly more. I kind of forgot. I feel like I talked way more than you, and I would love to hear more of you. But we could also do another call if you wanted to.
Yeah, either way. I mean, I still have some time, like I could talk like another 15-20 minutes, but if you want to, I don't mind. I love doing this. We can do another one where I can talk more, either later today or another day, whatever works. But I could get
Yeah.
into it for a bit.
Well, why don't we let's just hear more about you and your relationship. I personally would love to hear who you are, what you're doing, like how people can find you, why they should find you, and then what I'm very curious of people's, like, on ramp to working with dreams. Like, how
Yeah.
did you really commit to it, I suppose?
So basically, I've always been fascinated by dreams, like since I was a child. I never really paid attention to it or thought that there was, this was something that I could like work with deeper, but I always thought it was cool. I kind of had lucid dreams as a kid. But then in college, or I started studying psychology and neuroscience and stuff like that, and I kind of started to open it up. But really, let me think. Really, it was kind of like my spiritual awakening journey, which was a result of, some difficult times in life, like everybody, and also some psychedelic stuff, so that kind of opened up a world of like, okay, there's more out here, but like, where do I fit in, right? And then I think it was just a period of like really depression. Like I kind of started to use my dreams as like an escape. Like, like I started to induce lucid dreams because I just started to do some research and I found out like, oh, like I can have more lucid dreams on purpose. Like that's cool. So I kind of just started to do it for fun as like an escape from reality. And it ended up making me appreciate my life more because I started to just realize like all the potential there. And so I started keeping a dream journal like 3 years ago, and that was the biggest thing for me. Once you start keeping a dream journal, I committed. And I'm not saying I was always super consistent with it, but I started to care about my dreams. And then I just kind of about starting a podcast or just teaching about it. It was just a regular dream, which kind of gave me the idea, which is kind of funny. So
Wait, the dream gave you an idea to do a dream podcast?
yeah, it did. Or a
Will you tell me?
podcast. I didn't know it was going to be about dreams. I just had like a dream where I was like podcasting or whatever. And I hadn't ever thought of a podcast ever. So I thought that was cool. But before, that was like a year before I ever started the podcast. So for like a year, from like 2019 to 2020, I had this idea in my head, like, I want to do a podcast, but I don't know what, just because I had all this trippy cool stuff to talk about and I wanted to talk about it. That's basically what it was. I just wanted to talk about cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then after COVID, I joined I had joined just randomly off of finding some people on Reddit, like a group chat about dreamers and stuff. And when I joined that group chat, it just really inspired me more, because when you connect with like a community of like people who are into this, same type of dream stuff, it just opened up like a whole new level. I learned so much, like I started to talking to them all the time. And then I was like, hey guys, maybe I should, then it just kind of clicked to me one day, like, oh, I could do my podcast about dreams, and then I just was like, okay, I'll call it The Dream World, right? And everybody in the group chat was like, yeah, cool, like I'll help you, like I'll go on it, like, because I was like, guys, like, do any of you want to be on it? And they were like, yeah. So like one of my friends from there was like my first guest, or a couple of them were like my first guests. And that was November of 2020. And then it just kind of honestly took off from there. I started doing more podcasting. I started getting into Clubhouse. I just started like opening up this conversation, and it just started to flow in. And then I did my master's thesis on dreams. And so now I'm here. And then I started TikTok, which is going pretty good, but I'm just kind of doing it for fun. But I'm just starting to like use all these platforms to get my message out there and just see where it takes me. Like I don't really have a plan or like a specific end goal, but it's something that I learned to love. And I feel like there's benefit. Like you said, there's so much benefit in it for everybody. So that's kind of how I started.
Yeah, very cool. A few things that stuck out to me is like this. I really like that you sort of pivoted in life based off of your relationship to dreams, especially like this idea of like podcasting coming from your dream. I think that that's actually really common for people that have gotten really into dream work, is that it will actually point you in a direction that fills you with life, right? Like that's the point for me, is getting connected to that dream world will help you understand what it is to be filled full of lifefulness, of spirit, if you will. And it will guide you towards, like, I often ask it to help guide me towards what's going to fill me with energy in life, right? Like it makes me feel young again, essentially. Not that I'm that old, but relatively, I suppose. But I also noticed the relationship to dreams is almost defined by the willingness to journal the dreams. And I notice this often, that people want to work with their dreams and they'll work with it with the one they remembered from a few days ago, but they don't write it down. They don't keep record of it. And I found that the only way to tell the dream that you're really carrying is if you write it down.
I agree. I tell people that all the time. Like, you could try any method, you can do it any way you want, but writing it down is like pretty key. Like it's pretty important, because yeah, you're telling your brain, I care about this and I want to know more, and it builds your recall, and then you remember more.
Right. I think that's like the most common question I get on TikTok. You'll probably run into the same thing, which is like, how do I remember dreams? Right. And actually, that's where we met, was on a question of how do you remember your
Yeah,
dreams.
I found you responded and I was like, oh, I like his response.
Yeah, it's very, very common to hear that question. And for me, it's literally just about the intention. I think that the response is that you have to tell your rational mind, your ego, you have to say, hey, I know you don't like non-rational, non-linear, chaotic soup, but I want you to not dismiss this immediately when I wake up.
Yeah, and writing it down when you first wake up is important because you'll notice like 5 minutes, 10 minutes after it'll start to fade and then the details fade away. But another thing too is your body position. If you stay in the same position when you wake up, like you said, wake up slowly and just take a second to like let the dream come back to you. Actually, this
Yeah,
morning I had a false awakening where I wrote down my dream, pretend I in my dream, and then I woke up like, oh crap, I have to write it down for real now. But the
that's
false
funny.
awakening helped me remember it.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Like doing double the work almost. I don't like writing my dreams down. I think this is important for people to know that you don't like. I don't take a cold shower every morning because I love it. I do it because of the long effects that
Yes.
I have noticed. I really appreciate the same thing with journaling. I don't actually enjoy journaling. Every time I sit up in the middle of the night and I get my journal or I get my phone and I write it, I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I need. It's building a relationship. You can't rely on a friend that you only check in when you need something from it. You have to
True.
maintain a healthy relationship with a friend by caring, really. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think we
about
have to,
consistency, you know. And I see a lot of people too give up, like when it comes to the lucid dreaming, they'll be like, oh, I tried for like a week and it didn't work. So screw that, you know, but it's an ongoing thing. It's like a lifelong journey. You can't just give up on it after like a week, you know, it's
yeah,
consistency.
I've been doing dream work for 4 years pretty consistently. Also, dreams do come and go, right? Like I can't will the dream. So I have dry spells with the 3, 4 weeks. I won't have any dream, or like I don't remember any important dreams, or I just stop writing them down for some reason, and then they kind of disappear. And
Yeah, it
then
happens.
and then I'll have like a really loud dream, right? Where I'm like terrified. I actually love having nightmares. Is that weird?
No, I kind of do too, honestly.
I like love
I
the
wake
I
up so grateful. Like the feeling when I wake up, like if I have a really bad nightmare, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad that's not real.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
wake up excited. Like I'll have these really intense dreams. A lot of my nightmares are kind of like alien or fourth dimension stuff where I'll get sucked into a different dimension. Uh like these hauntings, I called them, or my dream world called them. They were like these um glitches. So like I would be like sucked into a wall and be stuck like in between a wall. It was almost like a quantum misfunction or whatever, right? And but then I'll wake up after like falling into blackness, and it's like boom boom boom, like I have all this electrical energy moving up and down my body, and I love it. I don't know what it is. And I also will often feel like there's characters in my room when I wake up, where I'm like there's people in here. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
weird.
Yeah, that happens to me too. And it's pretty common. I responded to a comment about this too. And also it can happen when you're falling asleep, you know, when we have sleep paralysis and we feel all this stuff. Like,
Uh-huh.
you know, for people that don't know listening to this, like sleep paralysis just happens every night. Your body paralyzes itself. And then, you know, as like a defense mechanism, so we don't sleepwalk or act out our dreams. But if you're consciously aware and you become mentally awake as your body's doing this, you know, you experience sleep paralysis. Some people will experience like vibrations or like sounds, like ringing sounds, or like you were saying, just like energy shooting through your body. And in my head, like, you know, like my metaphysical explanation is like we're literally moving through dimensions, you know, and like we are chemical beings. So like we experience these like different sensations, different energies. And like sometimes you might have fear. So you're like, oh, this is like something bad that's like trying to hurt me. But it might not necessarily be that. It might just be you projecting that fear onto it.
Right, a lot of times the things I'm very terrified in my room are uh unconscious characters of my own, so like my own personal unconscious being projected in the world, um visually. Like I will see my dream characters in the outer world when I'm in that hypno what's the p
Hypnopompia, but you know,
pompia
hypnagogic. Sometimes I just kind of use that as like an umbrella
general,
term.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when I'm in that world, I feel like the psyche expands. I did an explanation of this too recently. I think my perspective of seeing characters, dream characters, when you're waking up, or like if you have sleep paralysis and there's the witch, or like the thing that's coming at you or sitting on your chest, there are these different things. There's this process of switching, like you're saying, kind of switching dimensions, switching world, that our psyche is actually not just in our brain. It's a magnetic aura, probably something like this, like a magnetic field, and the perception field, like we can perceive our own psyche within a radius around us. So like you can actually project your inner content into the outer world, and it's not necessarily hallucinating. It's a you're interacting with your psyche in like this external way. It's really actually hard to explain. I'm not quite good at explaining it yet because I don't fully understand it, but there is this, and there's also, what's interesting about that is that the personal unconscious, yeah, that makes sense, where it's like I have these repressed parts of me and I might see them outside of me as evil men trying to kill me or something. Like when I wake up, I'll see this little girl in a pig mask sometimes, and she's like staring at me from my closet, right? And I feel like she's part of me, my personal collection, my personal unconscious. But there is the deeper part of that world where, like, maybe a character that shows up for me can also show up for you, and we could actually see this character outside of us. Like there's people that have shared experiences and stuff like that. It's very strange.
Yes, this the shared dreaming is something that has always fascinated me, but I don't know enough about it to, to say this is facts, and I don't think anybody really does. But I have heard stories like where people say, okay, I was lucid and I had a dream about my friend, and maybe they weren't lucid, but they had a dream about that person the same night, and it was a similar dream. Like this happened to my brother and his girlfriend, and they had the same plot of the dream, like were exactly the same. Like they went somewhere in a car and they got out of the car, whatever. I don't know exactly what happened in the dream, but they both said like they had the same dream. And
Yeah.
I think he was lucid, so he remembered more details of it because his consciousness was there, and she was not lucid, so she maybe remembered it more blurry or didn't remember all the details. But that's happened a lot. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it kind of, I think of it like a flower pot or like a flower bed, and you have individual sunflowers, right? And that me and you are two separate sunflowers, and we kind of see each other as separate. But if you go down into the stem, like we're still in the personal unconscious, but if you go all the way into the root system, we're actually all connected into that same dirt. And there's creatures in the dirt, there's like worms, and there's all these different things, but they're, the worm that is in the dirt is the same worm that you see, and it's the same worm that I see. Like you can go down into the collective unconscious and actually meet the same creatures. But in that connectedness of our roots, I think that dreams kind of stem up from there. So the deeper the dream, or the deeper into the unconscious you go, the more likely you're sharing it with somebody. So like I think you could have collective dreams. I've had dreams that I was like, this is a myth. Like this is an archetype of human behavior that I'm experiencing in my dream, and other people, like I felt like this is a real thing, right? Like this is I bet other people dream about the same thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. It's definitely, that's a good way to put it. And I can tell sometimes when I have dreams and I'm like trying to figure out what they mean, like sometimes it's a very personal thing, but sometimes like we do have dreams about like the collective, and the message is more like for a bigger picture, messages for the collective. We all have like, we're all experiencing all this crazy bullshit in the world. A lot of people are having like apocalyptic themed dreams, or like COVID dreams. There was a whole thing about COVID dreams. So like we're all experiencing this, and like I feel like our dreams definitely tap into like similar themes.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a lot of, I love apocalyptical dreams for some reason.
Yeah, I do too, and I'm usually pretty lucid in them because I'm like, oh, this is not real.
Yeah, I feel like I'm actually pretty lucid in mine too. Not fully, like I don't control it, but it's very vivid and I remember them very well. I remember this one where I just there was meteors just destroying everything, and I took a friend and I was like, we're just gonna go watch how beautiful this is, and we walked up the mountain and we sat and watched like the world get destroyed. It was really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, it's definitely like a lot of perspectives there. And yeah, you can be semi-lucid where you like know you're dreaming maybe, or it's very vivid, but you can't necessarily control it.
Right, yeah, that happens to me a lot, I think. But it's hard for me to pinpoint because time is weird in dreams, and so it's hard for me to pinpoint at what point I became aware that I was dreaming, because it could have been right when I woke up, but it kind of can be displaced in time, that actual realization.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to go to the bathroom so bad. So
Okay, do your thing.
do you-
Yeah, I mean, should we, well, how do you want to do this? We can end it, and then if you want to have another conversation later, there's so I feel like we have endless things to talk about.
yeah, no, I it kind of depends. We've been talking for what, an hour and 15. Do you like longer? Like, I notice your podcasts are kept on the shorter side than mine. Mine are like typically like an hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm not picky. Like it just really depends on the person. Like some of
Okay.
my older episodes were much longer, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would literally, if we just pause this, I would keep talking if you have time, or do you need to go?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go use the restroom.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I will be right back.
Hey.
All right. I want to know what your thesis. What was your master's thesis?
So it was focused on um, creative dreaming. So I actually, went to school for like graphic design, and I do some graphic design. But because I have a psychology background, I was like, I want to do my thesis on something like, that I'm obviously interested in. So I had to relate it to the art world, kind of. So, and when it comes to dreams, like, and my creativity, that's such, and I know you mentioned this too in your topics, like my dreams are a big source of inspiration for my creativity, like whether I'm conscious or lucid or not. So I talked about lucid dreaming and how different artists, like Salvador Dali and modern artists as well, like use their dreams for creative inspiration, and they, specific techniques you can do to like, like push you forward in that way, like whether it's your career or whatever. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I interviewed like some artists who do it. And
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That's there's this woman, Claire. Hold on. Claire Johnson. Claire R. Johnson. She wrote The Art of Lucid Dreaming, but she, I think, was the first person in the world to do a PhD thesis on using lucid dreaming for creativity.
oh, cool, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, she's really awesome. I love her energy. I think she has some courses on Young Platform, which I'm an ambassador for. I point people into some cool courses from some cool people. But and I've taken a bunch of their courses too. I really like that center for information. But I was gonna say, not only like I've heard stories about I've used it creatively too, but I think what's interesting is even the context of which like scientists have used dreams to have huge insights.
Yes, so many like big inventions come from dreams. Like maybe you know about the periodic table. So like Mendeleev,
Mm.
the scientist, he was working on the periodic table for a while. So he was already working on it, but he was stuck because he couldn't figure out like the order of the elements for some reason. And then he had a dream. He took a nap or whatever, and he had a dream. And then in the dream, like I guess he was thinking about it so much. And the phrase sleep on it comes from somewhere because our brains are still active trying to solve the problems of our waking life. So in the dream, all the elements just kind of shifted together into place of the periodic table that we now know. And he saw it and he like looked at it and memorized it in his dream. He woke up and immediately wrote it down, and that's how he arranged the elements.
Yeah, it's brilliant. The double helix for the DNA strand also came from a dream, I think. Like the actual form of it, but I can't remember the name of the guy that did it, who had the dream. But I love this because I've been thinking a lot about the intelligence of the unconscious mind, right? You have what we consider intelligence of rationality, or like the, you know, almost the computing, like the computer aspect of our cognition. And but you take all of this information and you kind of like put it into the unconscious. You, for instance, with music, I learned all of this theory cognitively. Didn't do me any good until it sunk into my unconscious mind, and then the unconscious mind started using it. And so when I write music, I'm a composer. I do classical piano, like romantic style classical piano. I step aside, and the unconscious uses the tools that I learned, and it writes music. It's really weird because I don't think about theory anymore. Like I don't use the theory, but my unconscious mind does. And it will. So I step aside. Jared steps aside. A music like experience happens where I watch a song pour out of me.
That's cool. Yeah, you know what? That's fascinating. And a lot of my friends that are like musical creatives say something similar. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Soul, Disney Soul.
No, but
Oh my God,
I've
it's
been
so
told
good.
so many
You have
times.
to watch it. You
I'm
have to
gonna
watch
write it
it.
down.
Yeah. So like, yeah, they have that. They literally describe that what you're explaining so well, where like the musician gets into this vibe and they literally go to like this spiritual dimension where they're creating music and they're like you said, their physical steps aside and they're like in the zone.
Yep.
It's cool.
Yeah. It's really interesting because it's very similar to dreams where it's not very linear. It's not very and what I mean by that is like we listen to songs with a start, a first chorus, or like a chorus, verse, second chorus, verse, bridge, whatever, right? Or even with classical music, it's much more like there's all these different parts, but there's climaxes, and then there's like the start, the climax, and the end of a song, right? But when I step aside and it happens, it's not linear like that. It's a moment in time that is endless. It's kind of weird. And so the song happens, but I don't capture it then, and I have to then invite my ego back to decipher, to use the building blocks that I was just given to then put into a song. It's really weird. So it's like this dual process where it's like I let this unconscious mind spew out this soup of melody and harmony and chords and beautiful things happening, and I get to experience that like a third person, right? Like I'm like, wow, this is amazing. It's not me, it's beautiful. And then I have to be like, okay, let's put this into a concrete finished project, and that is my least favorite part. I hate that, but
That's fascinating. That's a life hack.
yeah, yeah, no, music. I definitely think being forced to learn theory has helped, but like I don't use it. I've never consciously thought like, oh, I'm gonna do a like a 4 chord into a 2 chord, and then whatever. I don't even know what an augmented chord is anymore. Which like I'm like I studied piano for at least 12 years, like hardcore. and I don't remember it like anything. I probably would if I just actually spent some
Yeah, it's
time.
probably hidden in that subconscious, you know. You just
Yeah,
know what sounds good and you just make it happen.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah, sometimes I'll even use it as a tool to see how I feel, which is interesting. So there's the thing where I step aside and I experience a moment, right? And then there's also um where I will sit down from Jared, like from my ego, and I'll play, and whatever I hear is like how I feel. And so it's this extroverted way for me to go inward and see what my inner world looks like. Because I have a hard time slowing down and going inward unless I'm dreaming. I can check how I'm feeling based on what kind of music I play on the piano. So I'll sit down, and some days I'll just like bang on my piano super loud, and like I call it like jester music. Like it's very playful and almost annoying in a way. Like a jester would kind of bounce around, kind of prodding and annoying people, maybe. And other days it'll be so gentle and soft, or sometimes it'll be very sad, and I will be able to be like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Which is, it
Yeah,
sounds
that's so
ridiculous,
cool.
but
No, it really does come through. That I have that with my art too, and even my handwriting. Like when I look back in my journals, I'm like, I know I was depressed that day because of my handwriting.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
my handwriting is just chicken scratches all the time.
That's
I
funny.
can't read my dreams. I've been doing it in my phone for years, but I just started doing it in my journal because I feel there's this physical out, like a computer or phone still feels like it's in a different dimension to me, whereas like
Yeah.
this really pulls it into this dimension,
True. Yeah, one thing I always like have this like paranoia that like, oh, the internet can shut down, or what if this app just decides that, what if they just abandon the app, like I don't want to lose my dreams. So they have this feature where I can export it. So like once a month or every couple of whenever, I'll export it to a PDF, and then I could print it out if I wanted to, and that'll kind of give it some physicality. But there's just something like I do value the handwritten notes. Like I don't know, I don't have the patience anymore, but there's something about writing it down with your hands that like it does make a difference. Like it's like a mind body connection.
Mm-hmm. I also think the stimulation from a screen when I wake up in the middle of the night can pull
Yeah,
me out a little
it
bit.
does. Yeah, sometimes I'll voice record and then write it later.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does wake you up. The blue light wakes you up for sure.
Yeah. um there's a few things I was gonna say. um oh, with the music, I also have used dreams to fuel songs, right? Because like I had a dream once that I fell in love with this pianist in my dream. This beautiful, like, well, here's what's interesting. She had a piano. So I met her piano first, and her piano was this big piano, and it had like a roof to it, and someone had beautifully carved this beautiful thing, like I don't know what you would call it. It doesn't exist. Like I've never seen this on a real piano, right? But it was almost like this beautiful home. And I was like, whose piano is this? It's so beautiful. And like these people were like, don't touch it, like don't touch that piano. And then the musical director was like, you can touch it. She won't care. Like, go ahead and play it. And it's really interesting. And then eventually I met her and I fell in love with her. And the rest of the dream, we like ended up in a cottage in the woods and like we're married for eternity. It was really weird. I don't dream like that very often. But I captured, like, there was a feeling, right? Like of love and of uh not like normal human love, you know what I mean? It's like this really deep spiritual thing. And I pulled that into a song, or I sat at the piano with that feeling and played what came to me. And that is one of my favorite songs. It's so simple. Like most of my time I'm like overdoing everything. I like, because I like to show off. I'm like very, very, like all of these runs and stuff. I have very fast fingers and whatever. And this song was just so simple. And like um now it's one of my favorite songs ever because it had this dream energy behind it.
That's cool. Do you ever like hear like a melody or something in your dream that you really like, and then you're like, oh, I could make that?
I rarely do. My melodies come from feelings. sounds really weird, but feelings and melodies are the same thing.
Yeah, and it makes sense. That's cool. It does
But
make sense.
yeah, where so I can just embody a feeling, and then the melody, my hands do it. I don't hear any music in my head hardly ever. I've spent a long time making sure I built up a tool to not allow music to settle into my mind, because it influences me so much if I have something stuck in my head. Where like I can't get away from like a lyric or like a melodic cadence that will just keep going over and over and over again. It's probably something like I would be diagnosed with OCD or something like that. Like it gets very, very disruptive. And so I just have gotten really good at not thinking about music. So it's really a very unconscious process for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think I've always wanted to dream of music, but it just doesn't happen. I had a dream a month ago probably, where my mom was singing a song to a baby. It was me, um, and the song she was singing was like, I actually woke up and I recorded the melody. I haven't done anything with it, but it was interesting, because then I went back into the dream and I comforted my mother, because I felt that she was terrified of taking care of this baby. Um, and so I was able to comfort my mother, who was terrified of comforting me. Or like,
Oh, that's
it was like
sweet.
this
That's
really
a
interesting
cool
thing.
trippy loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. It's like, the reparenting. As we grow old, we kind of have to reparent our parents,
Mm-hmm.
which is a funny thing about life. It's like, now I'm teaching you how to grow up. Like, that's how I feel with my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a dream kind of like that where I saw myself as a child. And I was lucid, actually. I did it on purpose. I thought it would be cool. I was like, I want to see myself as a child. Like, I just want to tell myself things that I would have wanted to hear, And I was a very quiet, shy child. But I saw myself in my dream where I intentionally went looking for myself and I found a child. So in the dream, I was like, it must be me. But it looked different than what I looked like. Not too different, but but it still like felt like, oh, this is me as a child. And then I just started talking to myself and like asking myself questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the little version of me was saying the same things I used to say as a child. So it was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were you planning, did you have to comfort her or anything, or was it literally just like a conversation?
Both. Like, she was very quiet, like she didn't say much, which I was as a child. I was very shy. But I was like, me being me, I was comforting myself and like just giving myself like words of affirmation and like, just positivity that I would have needed. And she seemed to have responded well.
Yeah, like validating her experience a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's what we all need. I need that. I need to do
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah,
need to go
exactly.
back to little Jared and like, hey bud, it's okay. Like everything you're feeling is normal. Um, because I just realized like so much of my childhood I held in, because I thought if people knew about it, I would be rejected from my community. Um, I was very shy as well, but I had so much going on in my inner world.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I was very, very shy, but I was thinking, like, I remember being a child and having all these existential questions. Like, that's how I know that I was just destined to do this, you know, woo woo dream stuff or whatever people see it as. Because like I remember as a child being like, what am I? Like, am I human? Am I in a coma and this is all fake? Like I used to have these types of thoughts as like a 3-year old. I used to think I was
Interesting.
like, is this real? Like crazy existential thoughts.
Yeah. Did it scare you, or was it more
it,
fascinating?
it was fascinating. It didn't scare me. Like I've never been scared of death. Like I don't know why. Like, and I've always been like, I grew up like um Catholic and stuff, going to church, all this stuff. So like I just always kind of felt like, this, like there's more for me to understand. And I was never scared of it. Because I had scary dreams, I had lucid dreams. So I just felt like I wanted to explore my consciousness, and I didn't know how. Like I would spin around and make myself dizzy, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely me too. It's interesting because I think people can be like that as kids, and we either find an inward outlet to that desire for exploration, or an outward one, and that typically turns into drug use, I think. um, Exploring the psyche through manipulating it.
Yeah, true. And I did like when I did discover psychedelics, like I've never really, abused any drug or anything, but it did like make me want to do it more and discover more. But then I just kind of found like it kind of stops doing something for me after a while. Like it has to be at the right time. So then I learned very quickly, like when it comes to psychedelics or mushrooms specifically, I just let it come to me when I need it. When the universe tells me like, hey, I have something to show you, I just let it happen naturally. I don't, go looking for it or trying to find this, escape from reality anymore.
Yeah, that's huge. I think everyone I've ever met who has a positive relationship to mushrooms says the same exact thing. Let it come to you. Don't go looking for it. It will happen. Which,
Exactly.
referring back to the conversation earlier where I was saying dreams are nice because it will present you what you need. Mushrooms are the same way as long as you're taking them at appropriate times, like when you're called to it.
Exactly. You can't just use it with a certain expectation or to try to like escape reality, because it can be a scary bad trip if you're not like using it right.
It could be a scary trip even if you're using it. Like a lot of
Right,
times,
yeah.
a lot of times it's terrifying for me, but um, as long as you don't fight it, it's a good experience. The fighting of trying to get away from what you are experiencing, which is so metaphorical for, I mean, it's not even a metaphor. That's exactly what we suffer from in this world is
Hmm.
fighting what is.
Yeah, and also the environment, like same thing in life, like being around people when you're doing something like that who support you and love you and are compassionate to your trip experiences, it
Mm,
makes a huge difference. Because the first and only time I ever did ayahuasca, which I don't think I needed, but it did teach me a lot. It's a crazy, crazy story, but yeah, the trip guide that I was with was just not it. Like she was just making everything a million times worse. And I think part
mm,
of it was that, me being like kind of like a trip dream guide, like I kind of had to know what a bad guide is.
yeah.
But yeah, it made everything worse. And I don't know, maybe I did get something out of it. I'm still figuring it out till this day, but that was in 2018.
Yeah, I can imagine like I've always been hyper aware. I love what you just said because about keeping people around you that are supportive of the experience and understand what your intentions are, and how you said that's just like in real life, because I think that that is huge. I think one of the biggest changes I made when I went from being like a miserable alcoholic person to being the most happy I've ever been in my life and freed from addiction was changing who I surrounded myself with, which was so hard because I love my friends still, um, but I can only see them every 6 months because I can't. They don't support my reality, not because they don't love me. It's not because it's just we have very different values. We have very different type. Uh, I'm like super into cognitive function and like personality, like psychological personality type. Uh, and in fact, I actually dream in it now, so I have different characters show up as specific functions, which is really interesting. So I can like the dream world speaks to me very, very clearly a lot of the times because I've developed a framework that both my conscious mind and my unconscious mind can meet with. Very cool. I love it. But you have to start, like what we're talking about is a very we're talking about intuitive things. Some people just don't actually like the dream world, the unconscious mind. They want verifiable, concrete data or um, like sensate data. Although the dream world, like you were saying earlier, you can actually have all of that. But there's just like I'll get laughed at by some of my friends if I talk about experiences that I had, where I just want to explore ideas with people. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything. And so, but they'll laugh at me like I think I know what's going on or something like that. And so I just had to meet myself with, or like get myself with people that were like-minded and supportive in that way.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was telling you earlier, when I started meeting people who are into dreams as well, when I found that community, like it really just, it made me feel like, like I belong, like I'm less crazy, like I can explore these things that I don't know. And just like, like we're talking about, just like, what does this mean? What could this be? Like when you really start to just open that up with people that aren't like, oh, that's weird, that's crazy, it becomes way better.
Yeah, and I think so my podcast is called Suspending Disbelief, and I think a lot of that is this idea that um being open to not understanding, like not knowing, is really important to experience new things, right? There's this openness that is needed to become more conscious, to gain more consciousness. And so if you're constantly being met with disbelief, like, oh, tarot's bullshit. That's how I was for years. This is like, why, how could a card game be create more consciousness in my psyche or whatever, right? But when I finally was able to experience it with an open mind in a rational way, I used it like, like the Rorschach ink blot test where they would show ink blots and you project your unconscious mind onto it. Same way you could do tarot, but then I started having weird experiences, right? And synchronicities, and like then I was like, oh, there's layers to this, just like there's layers to the dream world.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't even know what we don't know. When people are so resistant to something, it's because they don't know. And that's like usually scary,
Yeah.
to them. But yeah, there's so much there. And I've never really fully got into like doing tarot myself, but I always knew that for the people that get into it, there's so much there for it to tell you. And I've had tarot readings and stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool. And even with like science and stuff, like that changes all the time. Like people need to understand that just because something is researched in science doesn't mean that's the end goal. Like we literally until recently, well, the human genome, for example, was only figured out like in the late like 90s. Like we just figured that out like 20 years ago, our DNA, so it's like,
Right.
and we used to think up until like 5 years ago that we can only dream in REM sleep. Now we know that that's not true. So it's like these things change all the time. We have to be open to like adapting instead of being so like, digging our feet into what we think can be true by like limiting ourselves with like, rationality.
Well, that's what's so interesting about the pop science world, is that like pop media pushes science with an agenda. So it's like just hardcore confirmation bias, right? Where people are doing studies to confirm their bias. And that's exactly the opposite of what science is. And so we actually have a misconception of what science is in our pop mainstream. Like it's not about studies. It's about, as in like, sure, there could be tons of peer-reviewed studies that prove something, but what science is about is disproving your hypothesis.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I get a lot of like comments on TikTok like, oh, let me see a study for this, let me see a source for this. And I'm like, okay, I'll show you, but don't rely on that to tell you. Because, and also people need to realize like all the answers are within us. Like we know everything deep down, like maybe not your conscious ego self, but deep down we do. And so like although I love science, like I don't rely on that to give me all the answers.
Yeah, and it's only one part of the world. There's many parts of it.
Yeah.
Also, I'm sure you agree, like you've already said you appreciate it and stuff, but it's a really awesome way of understanding the world. It's just we need to understand that it's not the only way of understanding the world
Yeah,
from
exactly.
a rational perspective. You're probably more scientific than I am. Even I have a hard time with science. So for instance, like peer-reviewed studies, because I could pull up like 15 studies that prove one thing and then pull up 15 more that prove the exact opposite.
Exactly. I was going to say that too. Like science is only as good as the person conducting the experiment, like, and like we're all just humans with the same amount of knowledge of what's going on Earth. Like when it comes to the laws of physics and stuff like that, the laws of physics are based on our physical reality, like the rules of our physical reality. And like I think you mentioned earlier, our dreams have different rules. Like there's different laws, they don't operate off of the laws of physics. So when we're talking about dreams, like it doesn't necessarily help to focus on science because it doesn't relate to science of
Right.
Earth. You know, it's different.
It's not the science world, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, Super interesting. You said so many things that my brain went into 100 different directions, and now I can't uh, remember where I wanted to go. But you studied neuroscience.
Yeah. So in my undergrad, I did. Um, my major was, I had a minor in psychology, and my major was NDV, which is neuroscience and biology, basically.
Mm.
I just always really loved psychology and science. And to be honest, I only did that because my mom wanted me to go be a doctor or whatever. Like, you know, my mom's a doctor, so there was like a lot of pressure there.
Uh,
I did not want to do it at all, but I kind of settled for like psychology because I thought it was cool. You know, it was like a major. I took some cool classes. And it did like lead me towards this path, you know, which I'm on now. So, you know, it worked out, but I knew that I did not want to do medicine or anything like that.
yeah. Super interesting. I've thought so many times of going to school for psychology, and every time I almost do it, I realize that I don't actually like the academic approach to psychology is very different than what I'm interested in.
Exactly. Yeah. Same. I definitely
Yeah.
had to branch out, you know, and do my own thing, but it gave me a good basis. But I don't know. To be honest, it's nothing I could have learned on my own.
Yeah,
But
I just read the books, you know. I'm reading The Body Keeps the Count right now.
oh, I love that one. I have to read it again. I keep seeing it. Synchronicities.
It's intense, but it's helping me a lot. Like I've always looked at things from a very spiritual like energetic level, and I like this because it's the opposite approach, but he's saying the exact same things, right? Like I've always been like, okay, the solution to my problem is to build a better relationship with the present moment, because if I'm in the future, I'm in my anxiety. If I'm in the past, I'm in regret. So if I can be present, uh I'm that's where God, quote unquote, is, right? That's where um the kingdom of heaven is within you, is what my boy Jesus Christ said. I I grew up Mormon, and I'm very not religious, but I love the symbolism of Christianity.
Mhm.
And but anyway, so the present moment was always my issue, right? Where I drank alcohol to get pulled into the present moment. It made me comfortable in the present moment. So it was my relationship to the present moment that I needed to fix. And um I always looked at that from like a spiritual perspective of like um I don't even know how to explain it now that I'm talking about it, but with the trauma, like I've been in fight or flight my entire life. And so I really don't like being in my body. So it's really hard for me to be present, because the body is what's in the present moment. Um the mind, it can go all sorts of places, which is interesting actually in context to the psyche being relative to time, but that's besides the point. So the body being stuck in the present moment at all times, if I can get into my body, then I'm present. But I need to fix my relationship to my body so that I enjoy being in the present
Yeah,
moment. Yeah.
that's true. I'm learning that a lot too lately because yeah, like I always have a lot of anxiety. I'm always thinking about, you know, the future, the, you know, the past, whatever, and everything but the present moment. But yeah, it's definitely a good lesson too.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that I think it's human
Yeah.
to struggle with all that stuff. Like I always wish I could be perfect so that when I'm working with people, I'm like, yeah, you have me to look forward to. Like you get to be just like
Yeah,
me.
but we learning by teaching, like you learn, you know, I've noticed that too. Like you're always learning, you know, and the more you teach, the more you learn from others. So it's like that's what we're here for. I don't think it's possible to just be perfect.
No. That's the thing about the ego too, is as we learn new things, it also dismisses other things back into the unconscious. So we're kind of constantly becoming conscious of certain things and unconscious of other things. I think you could like get better and better at holding paradox in your mind. So like things that are simultaneously true, even though they seem like
Yes,
opposites.
two things can definitely be true at once. That's the
Yeah.
thing I've learned. And that's really hard for the human mind to wrap your head around because if, like you were saying, one thing says one thing, this is saying the opposite, but it's really a perspective thing. Like it's relative.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just listening to a podcast called Personality Hacker. They do cognitive function stuff. They're very, very intelligent. I really like their stuff, but they're essentially talking about uncertainty and how we spend our whole, like, one of the core axioms of like the human experience is to try and get as certain as possible about as many things as you can. And so when we hold two like seemingly opposite things in consciousness at once, that's holding uncertainty, right? Like there's no certainty about the fact that this is truth or this is truth. It's like, no, both of them are true. So like there's this desire for certainty that then will dismiss one of those in lower, I say lower consciousness, but that sounds almost rude in a sense. That's just what being in like a very dualistic reality is that you'll dismiss opposites, polarities, like the right and the left, right? Like government, they utilize that polarity to separate people.
Yeah, that's a big one. And then when you really get deep into your spiritual awakening, which I noticed recently, you realize that they're both the same. Like they are the same people on the other side of the veil. They're just picking a side based on what they think will win or control people. And like I've become so detached from politics, and I'm trying not to, because I know it's important to like know what's going on. But
Right.
it just all is seeming so fake to me that I can't.
Yeah, I have a hard time with it too. I the only reason I pay attention is because I feel social pressure too. But I honestly don't think we have a lot of say anymore. And
We
people
don't.
probably get mad at me for saying that.
It's true. Your vote, I'm sorry. I don't think my vote matters. I just don't. They're going to do what they want to do regardless. It's all part of the control. Make you think like you have to vote for one or the other, blue or red, but really it's the same people. They're all the same, and they all suck.
Yeah. I do believe in more localized participation on my part.
Yeah, I think local elections matter, but I don't know about the big ones.
It's still hard for me to do the local stuff, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. My brother is kind of like my balancing force in that, because he's very political science, and he's like, let's go vote, and like he knows what's going on, and like I always ask him, like he's like my Google, like I ask him everything. But yeah, he kind of even agreed with me. He was like, yeah, like the local elections is where change can actually happen, because it's more so like, I don't even know the terms properly to be able to explain it.
Yeah, me neither. We'll stick to our
Yeah, we'll stick to what we know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. That duality of, well, that certainty and uncertainty is, I think I actually think that people don't like dreams because they are not grounded in any type of concrete certainty. Like the ego really likes, I say this a lot on my TikTok, likes linearity. It likes rationality. It wants to be grounded in certainty, which is why people love dogmatic religion. That's why people love dogmatic science, because it makes them certain.
Exactly. That's true. And like, what was I going to say? Yeah, like we always just want to know the answer. And that takes us away from the present moment too. Like you were saying, like always wanting to know the answer. And yeah, it's crazy. And even the whole thing about religion, it gives us a framework of something that takes us away from the whole purpose of what Jesus was even talking about to begin with. Like right. Jesus, I don't think he would be about everything that's going on.
No,
right
he literally
now.
was his whole point was like, stop paying attention to the church.
Literally. And he was just an ascended master who, he was not even Christian. He was Jewish by where he was born. And like, yeah, it's funny how we've twisted it so much.
Yeah, well, it turned into a very, very powerful government, essentially, which is, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and our government is Mormon. It's the Mormon church. It's very interesting here, which isn't supposed to happen, but it did. Very strange, but it's slowly changing because more and more out of state people are moving here. But I was going to say, I don't know. Religion's interesting because there's so much truth there that is utilized to manipulate, which is the worst kind of manipulation, I think.
Yes, it's true. It's utilized for control and to divide people, because the crazy thing is all these religions and all these theories, schools of thoughts, they all have truth to them. They all have their own perspective based on their cultures and where it emerged from. perspectives of real events, but we've distorted the image just to, or they use it for manipulation. It's sad. Even, and now it's even evolved to this new age spirituality thing, and I feel like I can just see the evolution of that becoming something, and I don't know where it's going to go. But
yeah, that's a really good point. I think I don't there's like a big spiritual community that meets next door all the time, and I don't feel like I belong there, which is really interesting. And I think a lot of it has to do with adopting. I think what is really important is being able to hold space for people using a different framework, wearing different colored glasses to see the same thing. So it's like we're talking about dreams, and I think we both have a different approach, but we are talking about the same things, right? And I think that's really important to remember, that the human experience actually is very, very similar from one person to the next. And we just try to find language to explain it. That's why I really don't like music critiques, which is interesting, because I'm like, no, they're just expressing their experience. If there's other types of music, there's very egoic music, and I can get behind critiquing that. I don't care. But when it's like someone's bearing their soul, and then you're like, oh no, that's shitty. It's like, no, it's their subjective experience. Like, there's no judgment to be made.
yeah, and music tastes are so relative to like how you grew up, they're what you're
It
used
doesn't.
to.
I'm also not saying you can't dislike or like music, but to tell someone that they need
Right,
to
exactly.
change the way they express themselves is interesting.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not about that.
Yeah. I don't know if you've listened to Kendrick Lamar's new album, but I'm a big fan of it. I think it talks a lot about some of the
I haven't finished listening to it, but I checked it out briefly.
Yeah, I really like it. But anyway, well, very cool. Do you have anything else you want to talk about before we go?
I don't know. Like, do you have any questions or something? I don't know.
I mean, I could talk about lots of different things, but I think well, I want to tell you that I'm very interested in like participating in anything that you would like. I have a hard time creating community, I think. Or I got followers, but I'm like, I have like a Discord of 100 people, and like none of them talk to each other. It's like,
really,
they're always just looking to me for answers, and I'm not a guru. Like, I don't want that, right? Like,
yeah.
I
I'll hook
want
you up. I have a really, really great community. So I have a WhatsApp group with 200 people in it, and I'm an admin in it, but honestly, I barely contribute. They always like, it just does itself. That's really cool. And then like I was telling you about the Clubhouse thing, we could totally do, like I do twice a week on Clubhouse. And sometimes like if I meet someone like you who wants to like, hey, let's do a Clubhouse room. I have a Clubhouse group. It has like almost 3,000 people in it, but they're not all online at once.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just start a room about whatever random topic, and it's kind of like a podcast but like interactive, and you can save the audio too and use it as a podcast episode. And you can open up the stage and people come on and like, oh, I love what you're talking about, I have a question or I have something to share, so it's kind of like what we're doing but with like 20 people
watching.
Yeah, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I would love to know more about the WhatsApp stuff. I think more than for me to talk, like I want places that I want to be able to guide people that want to interact with people to a better place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Clubhouse is definitely the place for that. We should schedule a room just so you can kind of see. I have one on Tuesday if you want to just see what it's like. I think, didn't you pop into one the other day?
I popped in, but I couldn't stay long.
Yeah, that was just a little check-in. It wasn't nothing big, but
no,
yeah,
it's cool. I haven't really interacted with Clubhouse much, but I actually really like the context of being like, I could interact with a few people that I see a lot on my TikTok who I never get to actually like interact with, but without over committing to like a relationship of some sort.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very like there's a boundary there, and I've honestly just started to kind of get more consistent with it because I've had this group and I haven't done as many Clubhouse rooms, but I'm realizing like this is something that I could really like build on. So
I like the platform, and I would be willing, if you're willing, I'd be willing to like
Yeah, we should
do
schedule a
something.
room. Yeah. I mean, you let me know when you have, I'm pretty free on it, and we can schedule it in advance so I can kind of post it on like maybe a week or two in advance so I can
Yeah,
post about it on Instagram, like, join in or whatever.
cool.
But
I would
even
love
if
that.
you're like randomly like, hey, are you free today? Let's do a clubhouse room. I do that too. So
Cool. Okay, yeah. I'm spending a lot of time in the next 3 months trying to be online, doing live things, interacting with people. I'm trying to get the event, my retreat. I want people who are interested in learning more about dream work. I want those signups, and it's there's a select crowd that's going to be interested in going to Tulum with me, but I want to get that out there, and also that I'm going to be doing this consistently.
yeah. Oh, I would be
Um,
interested if I wasn't so broke. But maybe I'll catch you next year.
yeah, no, maybe you'll run into a big chunk of money here too.
Like that.
That
Yes.
happens.
It
So,
does. No, I mean, that's how I live my life. I'm past the whole working for other people and being miserable thing. So
oh, me too,
I'm
me
trying
too.
to monetize TikTok, podcast, everything. I'm just trying to do what I
Yeah.
love and make money, but we'll
Yep.
get there.
Yeah, no, it takes time. I'm up and down. Like at the beginning of this year, I was in it, I was making money and it was very fun, and then it just completely dropped out. And now I can feel momentum again.
Oh,
People
you
are
know what
reaching out
else
to
we can
me,
do? We
and
should go live on TikTok
I
together.
was I was waiting to finish this to
Yes.
say the exact same
Sorry.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it just
No.
popped into my head. We should do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I
down to
think that
help
would be
you. We
really
should help
good.
each other. Yeah. Because we have similar goals, and I'm all about like lifting people up with me, especially people that come on the podcast with me. Like, you know,
Yeah. And I've talked to a lot of people. I've met a lot of people on TikTok, but I feel like um our perspectives align a lot more than usual with people I talk to. Like I love talking to everyone, but it's nice to kind of share a very similar perspective or approach to something.
yeah. Yeah. And I think our conversations flow really naturally. I think people will enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be pretty like get more into it, like consistent, like weekly, something on Clubhouse, something on live, whatever. So I mean, you just let me know.
Yeah. I would be down to I need to be more consistent too. I go live. If you ever see me go live, you can hop on and request to um, hop on with me. But we could also plan something for TikTok. I get like I did a live. I usually just answer questions, boom, 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 and I'm very hot. Like I burn really hot, where I can
Mhm.
just go for like I did 2.5 hours a few days ago, just
Nice.
answering questions, and I got like 40 followers and like 2,500 people stopped in it like throughout the whole thing. And like got a lot of information out there. So like I really like doing live stuff because lots of magic happens from like
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. And I
interacting.
know the TikTok algorithm likes it, like when you go live too. So
Oh my for the 2 hours that I was live, I got like tons of like people liking tons of my videos. I was like, oh yeah, TikTok pushes my stuff if I'm live because it wants me on the app. It's kind of interesting.
exactly. Okay. Yeah. True. I tried to go live a couple times, but I'm still new to it. So it
I
definitely will
I
help.
I'm good at it. I'm good at it now.
Cool.
I wasn't at first, but
Yeah. It's
I'm
awkward at first.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's do it. Sure. I'm pretty free. So you let
cool.
me know.
Um, I'm about to go out of town for a week, or from Wednesday to Sunday, but we could do something on TikTok before that if you wanted to, or
Yeah. Yeah.
wait
I'm
till
down.
we get back. But
Either.
um, what's that? Sunday, Monday, Monday might be okay, or Tuesday would actually be good too.
Either. So Tuesday I do Clubhouse. So we can either do before or after.
Would you
Um,
want me on that Tuesday clubhouse or no?
yeah, if you want to join in, you're totally welcome to. Tuesdays I do I host it with my friend Martin, who I told you about, who I did my first Clubhouse with. I met him in the WhatsApp group, and
Oh,
he I mean, you're welcome to join. I'm just telling you about him. He studied lucid dreaming in like Buddhist temples with monks and stuff, so he has a
cool,
really cool background. So we do specifically rooms about dreams, and we just open up conversation and stuff, and you would totally fit right in.
cool.
So that's that. But I like doing other topics too, because I always focus on dream topics, but now I'm like, we can do, some like young stuff. We can open up a talk about anything. And then usually on Clubhouse, people will just take it and run with it. And it's a really good community. It's a lot of like-minded people.
Cool. Yeah, I'm down. I'll join, and whether I participate or not is up to the flow.
Yeah, right.
But tell me what time that's at, and then maybe we can schedule. Do you get burnt out? Are you kind of go mode all day?
I'm go mode.
Okay, so we could do a live after.
Yeah, exactly. We could do a live right after. As a matter of fact, I like that because I'm already in the mode.
Yeah. Do you?
It's gonna be Tuesday
where
at
are
1,
you?
I think.
What's your time zone?
Eastern time. I'm in Georgia.
In Georgia. Okay.
You're an hour behind me, right? Yeah.
I might be 2 hours behind you. It's 1:23 here.
Oh, it's 3:23.
Yeah.
For me.
So what time is your TikTok? Or sorry, your Clubhouse?
It's gonna be at 2 on Tuesday, I believe.
2 on Tuesday.
For me, so 12 for you.
12. Okay, so I have 2 calls during that first hour. So I might not be able to make it, but should we schedule something for how long do you usually go?
Usually no more than an hour.
Should we give it a little bit of time and schedule for
to go live on TikTok?
To go live on TikTok, we could do sorry, I'm trying to do the conversion to your time. We could do like 1:30 or 2 p.m. my time, which is
perfect.
Which is right now.
Right now. Okay, yeah, perfect. Let's do that.
What time? 2? Should we plan on 2 to give you plenty of time, or do you want to just jump?
Yeah, we can plan on 2, and then we'll stay in touch, like if anything, but we can plan on 2 p.m. your time, so 4 my time, just to make sure.
Okay, TikTok live
for this Tuesday.
I want to type you. Do you know your personality type?
Yeah, mediator.
I don't know Myers-Briggs.
What other personality type?
Oh, sorry. So Carl Jung came up with cognitive type, and then Myers and Briggs took that and added perceiving and judging. But I use cognitive function, which is more related to his original, but it also utilizes the 4-letter dichotomy, but it creates a 8 function, like where your personality, where the 8 functions show up, the 8 functions that Jung developed, where they show up in order in your personality. So I use Myers-Briggs as like a decoder for your functions, but I don't know anything about like the nicknames and like the commercial Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs is a company now, and I don't know anything about that.
Okay, yeah, I have to look it up. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm just curious because I use it a lot when like coaching and stuff, and it helps me understand people's.
Well, maybe you can help me figure it out.
I would love to. Yeah. Cool. I'm curious because you seem, I thought one thing for a second, but I think once you got more comfortable with me, it kind of switched. Not in a bad way, in a really like, you just seem more comfortable towards the end of the conversation. I mean, which is normal when you're meeting someone for the first time, right? But so I thought you were maybe like a extroverted thinker. Would you say you're a thinking type over a feeling type? Like without knowing what that really even means?
Okay, without knowing what that means. Yeah, maybe thinking.
Do you make better decisions if you lean into like if you're making a decision, what's more important? Every variable or the human variable? Like, even if the human variable is included in making a decision, is there also a bunch of other variables in making decisions? Or is it mostly just like how you feel or how other people feel?
Kind of both. I don't know, actually. Like, that's a hard question for me to answer because I overthink. I'm very introverted. I overthink a lot, and I definitely like look at all the factors and overthink like how other people feel more than I focus on how I feel. But recently I've been trying to like make more intuitive decisions.
Sure.
I'm very indecisive though. So that's why I don't know. It's hard for me to answer that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean,
I want to figure it out though. I feel like it'll help me figure it out.
Yeah, no, I would love to help you figure it out. And that answer in it of itself points me in a direction for your personality.
Yeah.
That's what is interesting about profiling people, is that no answer is wrong or whatever, right?
True, yeah.
But you definitely seem like an intuitive type.
Yeah, for
People
sure.
can't talk to me as long as you have that aren't intuitive type, because we're in the clouds a lot of the times, and that can get exhausting for sensing types. But anyway, I would love to at some point. I could probably eventually pull a very large crowd for cognitive function. There's a big world out there for personality type. It'd be interesting because I think that it's related to dreams in a bigger way. It's not fully flushed out in my framework yet, but dreams are very important with the development of personality, I think. So eventually I'm going to be talking more about that stuff.
Cool. Yeah. The cool thing about Clubhouse is it's good for that. If you have a large crowd that you say, hey, come check out our Clubhouse chat on this day. What I've done is like when I've had big guest speakers and stuff, like we can have a conversation before we open up the stage for people to come up and ask questions. Like we can moderate how interactive people are. So like sometimes I'll open the room and we'll all just talk together and we'll go through the stage, everybody sharing. But in bigger rooms, like we'll, the moderators will talk about whatever. And then at the end, we'll be like, okay, raise your hand or come to stage if you want to contribute or ask a question,
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how responsive my TikTok following is. That's something I haven't necessarily. TikTok is difficult. It's different than any other platform because you don't really know how many of the followers you get are engaged or seeing your content at all.
True.
Like I'll get like 500 views on most of my videos, and I have almost 60,000 followers.
Yeah, I'm learning too. It's definitely a work in progress, but I think you're on the right path. So.
Yeah, no, I think. When did you start
TikTok? I started taking it seriously like January, February, like just recently, like this year. I've been kind of fucking around with it like since since November. But I mean, I had one video do really well I really honestly did not take it seriously until I had one video that got like 800,000 views. Right. And then after that, I was like, I got a lot of followers in a short amount of time. And then I realized like, if I am consistent right now, I can like ride this wave. So ever since that day, ever since March 26th, I think it was, I've been posting every single day. And it's been like, I went from like 500 followers to like almost 7,000 in 2 months.
Yeah. No, I think you'll grow really, really quick. I think you'll get more followers than me very quickly. I think I started TikTok in November, in the end of October.
That's really good.
But I posted almost every day up until recently, and I've totally plateaued. But I just am like, it's not actually worth. I've got followers. If I can't do something with 60,000, I can't do something with 160,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I think it just depends on, like you were saying, how engaged are those followers and how much, like how consistent are they? It's hard. I really don't know. I'm figuring it out, but we'll see.
I think the best thing both of us could do is actually start interacting with each other and finding other people to interact on TikTok. Yeah,
I agree. I think so too.
Cool. Well, I've got it in my calendar for